Welcome back to the Producer Podcast. I'm your host, Micah Versman, and today we're sitting down to talk to a position closely related to the producer, the production manager. To do that, we're joined by Allison Weber, who has helped manage several feature films, including Scott Peterson's Treasure Lies. So without further ado, let's get started. Thank you very much, Allison, for coming on the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
So, and I kind of got connected to you because Scott Peterson had mentioned you when I had him on the show talking about producing Treasure Lies and that. But maybe like kind of introduce yourself, how you came to actually do work in the film industry.
Absolutely. So I had done a semester, quote unquote, abroad in Los Angeles, California, through my college. And it was a program called Los Angeles Film Study Center. I had always wanted to explore film and even music I was interested in at the time. And I thought, this is a good way to go to California, see what it's about, see if I even like filmmaking, if it's something that I'm interested in. And so I did this 4.5 months in LA, absolutely loved it. We got a chance to live and do internships in California and, make projects on the side as well as be in class during the day. And I absolutely loved it. I didn't leave there knowing exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I want to pursue filmmaking. Of course, I had to come back to Minnesota and graduate. So I ended up back in Minnesota and pursued opportunities here. And as you can imagine, there are not a lot. But I definitely took as much time as I could to just research, explore what was out there. Anything that was film related that I thought I could try or do while I'm in Minnesota, that's what I was looking for. And it took a little bit of time, but I ended up stumbling across this position with Scott Peterson, I Films, for a production manager for their second movie, and reached out to Scott, let him know that I would be interested. And I sat down, interviewed with Scott. He brought me on for the position on their second movie, Miles Between Us. And that was my first intro into an actual feature film. I had done things in class and projects on the side, but that was my first production, feature film production.
Nice. So then, with the kind of production manager position, was that something that you just found you enjoyed and kept doing, or was that, sometimes people just hear you've done something and they just keep asking you to do it, even if that's not really where you want to be working?
That's a really good question. I liked it, loved it, had so much fun. However, with that being said, I think as filmmakers in general, we are creative people that like to explore things and different opportunities. And I did find that in the production manager role, I liked it and I was good at it. And there were a lot of things I really, really enjoy. However, is that the one position I want to do in film, indefinitely? No, I definitely want to explore. I've done some editing, I've done some writing, I've done script supervisor positions, I've even PA'd in art department. So yeah, it is something that I enjoy and I do think I'm good at, and I like the organization and the managing a lot, and I really enjoy that position. But I think in filmmaking, it's one of those rare industries where you kind of can do other things and there is some crossover. And that's actually something that has drawn me to the film industry as a whole.
Definitely. So, since I don't really have much experience working with production managers, and that I'd love to hear kind of like how you would describe the difference between like what a producer does and what a production manager does.
Absolutely. It is going to depend on exactly the type of movie you're making, or if you're making a movie, or maybe you're making a reality TV series or, a commercial. It's definitely going to be different. I can certainly speak to my experience in independent feature filmmaking. The producer is the overseer of everything, the head, the CEO in a sense, hiring everyone, managing the large, very high end scale of the production. I saw myself as sort of like the producer's assistant.
Okay.
Certainly running the production, managing the production as the title states, but I wanted to do my best to take as much off his plate or her plate as possible. If there is something small that I can either handle or delegate, I want to do that. Ideally, the producer, when you get to the actual shoot, is kind of just doing not nothing, but kind of nothing. Like, that's the goal, is that they can kind of just focus on making sure everything is running smoothly and they don't have to be pulled in a million directions. So I saw myself as a buffer, if I could be, a liaison, if I could be, between maybe the general public. So if we have like a vendor, I'll handle that and be the liaison between the crew and the vendor. If I can manage, any questions, handle anything, I tried to be that person. And obviously, to be able to do that, you need to know, the ins and outs of the shoot and what's going on from every direction. That's the best way I can kind of describe the way I see the position. It's kind of the catch-all, and if you can be the producer's like clone essentially, and not make them have to run around, I think if they're able to relax, then I think I'm doing a good job.
Okay. So like with that, at least on like the features and stuff you've managed, were you usually like actually on set most days, or were you more like in the production office and doing like your work from there?
Not on set much at all, actually. So, if you're someone that loves being on set, this may not be the best position for you. There was a lot of things I needed to do not on set, and most of my job was at my computer. We had a little like production. It was a motorhome.
Okay.
It had Wi-Fi. It had printing. It had everything you need to be like a mobile office, and that was where I lived.
Cool. So maybe just kind of like walk us through what like a day in the life of a production manager has looked like for you.
It's definitely different depending on if it's pre-production or production. So in pre-production, you're planning everything needed for this shoot. So you are securing locations, finding locations. You are planning the schedule. When can we be where? What scenes can we shoot these days? What makes the most sense as far as the shooting schedule? You're coordinating travel for anyone coming in, making sure everyone has what they need, knows where they're going, before they even get to set to start shooting. And a plethora of smaller things, any little thing that would maybe be needed for the day from someone outside the production. So, for example, there was a time when we needed like 100 tuxedos. And so, okay, I'm on that. I'm looking for where can we get these? How can we get these? What's the best solution? Little things like that, as far as in addition to also planning, the location, getting a map of the location, where will crew park, where will crew be able to set up, where will we enter, where will we exit, do we have time restrictions, things like that. I also handled some of the legal things, if we needed permits, if we needed releases, if we needed, tax documents from the crew. I organized all of that paperwork and all the logistics, the not fun creative things. That's a lot of the pre-production. A day in the life, if you're on set, I would try to get there first. I wanted to be there to make sure if someone's pulling up and they don't know where to go, that I could direct them. I would get there. I would make sure, okay, the doors are unlocked. We have somewhere to put everyone. Everything is arriving as it should be. I would also try to field the PAs as they're arriving, delegate if I had some available and I needed them to go, hey, can you go at this entrance and let these people in, and delegate that way. Make sure we are rolling and everyone's moving and everyone's, got what they needed.
Yeah.
Once I was sure that was settled, I would, jump in the production trailer, and if I had any incoming emails, sometimes there would be the extras coordinator would email me, oh, I have a question, extras are coming, can we tell them this? Or, things like that, little things that just you need to handle before we can start.
Mm-hmm.
Anything like that I could field. Once the production's up and running, I am making sure actors are coming through makeup, that they know when they're supposed to be where. Sometimes there's a designated person on set that is specifically managing the actors, and a lot of times if I had a PA available, I would utilize them for that. But in a smaller feature production, sometimes you just have to be the one. And so I would definitely try to anticipate any of those sort of things where I could foresee or head off any issues and handle them so that the production could essentially continue.
So you kind of, you're talking there what you do in pre-production. So I guess one question I have is like, at what point in pre-production should you get a production manager brought on?
That's a good question. It would depend on how much the producer, in speaking in feature, independent feature films specifically, how much does the producer want to do on the forefront? So yeah, for the second movie I worked on with II Films, I want to say I was brought on like 7 weeks before production we shot that in Oklahoma, to actually be there. I was there location scouting. There, I could be there doing that and actually seeing the spaces. I could also be there making connections if I needed to. That's also a little bit of a nuance to the position, where if you're working in a city where you're gonna need locations, you're gonna need vendors, and you're gonna need to find these people, and so being there is helpful.
Yes.
Also planning the actual shoot schedule. So that was definitely part of the position. So if you're getting to the point in a production where you're ready to start planning the schedule, maybe that's a good time to bring someone on to help with that, before it gets too far. I think if you get too close to actual shooting to bring on a production manager, it's going to be difficult to get them up to speed.
Mm-hmm. Besides, obviously, like the producer, like what other positions usually have you found are like working closely with you?
That's a great question. It almost feels like everyone. I think most closely anyone that's in the production trailer with you. The second AD was in there with me most of the day. So she's obviously, doing her thing with planning the call sheet for the next day, and we would communicate we would help each other. She would have questions for me, I would have questions for her, vice versa.
Yeah.
At the end of every shoot day, we would do a little powwow meeting. It would be the director, the producer, first AD, second AD, and me, mostly. And I felt like I was working with them, not necessarily closely on a day-to-day basis, but closely in the sense of we are the team that's kind of organizing the shoot from day to day.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with them a lot in pre-production. We were the ones that went around to scout locations, plan the schedule together, discuss things like that.
Right. I guess one of the bigger questions I had is, how can a producer best help the production manager do their job? So that like you feel like you have everything you need, but that you can like do your job to the best of your ability.
It is going to depend on when you're brought on in the schedule of the pre-production.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, knowing as much as possible. So essentially communication. One thing that worked really well that Scott and I did was have a working document.
Okay.
Like a Google Doc that we had basically to-do lists, and they were prioritized. So he would have a column in the same document, I would have a column. And then we would have, other little things that were, down the line. Sometimes he would add things to Allison's to-do list. Sometimes I would add things to his to-do list. We also had a working document that had all of the contacts. I found I needed to know so many different people. I needed to know way, way more individual people than I ever imagined. And their name, what they're doing with our production, because these aren't people that are on crew. Their email, their phone number, what do we need from them, if anything? Have we followed up? Are we waiting for a response? Things like that. Having that line of communication that was constantly flowing, we almost have to sort of be of one mind a little bit, and so having as much information as possible was extremely helpful.
Is the production managers, is their job very much just like pre-production and production, and then you're kind of done on the movie, or are there aspects of like post-production and that you're still involved in?
It is pre-production and production, and then I'm done.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah. During production, I'm still working on like the next day. So I'm obviously anticipating needs for the shoot day, but I am also looking at tomorrow. Do we have everything we need? But once that's done, once, there is no tomorrow, that's it.
I'm just curious, like, is that weird then? Like when you're like done on a project because you've been involved so long, or is it more kind of like nice to know you have a little bit of a break?
It's kind of sad. It's like you don't want to let it go, like but that's a testament to being really, in love with what you do when you're like sad that it's over, right? Like that's a good thing, even though it's hard.
So I guess one thing I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on is for like beginning filmmakers out there who maybe either they don't know anybody that could be a production manager, or they just don't have the budget to bring a production manager on. Like, what would you advise them to do when they're maybe having to do multiple roles, including that job?
I think depending on the size of your project, the timeline, how many days are there, how many locations are there, maybe you don't need one. Also, one thing I'll caution with a lot of independent filmmakers, if you are making a smaller project, most likely you're probably producing it and doing something else. Sometimes I've seen where maybe you're producing it and directing it and maybe editing it. So just be aware of how thin you're stretching yourself. If you truly feel you don't need one, maybe you're just producing and maybe you don't need one. Maybe it's a small enough production. Maybe it's just one location, two locations, a few shooting days, a short. Those would be instances where I'd think, you could probably get by. But be prepared that you're going to be the one everyone's going to come to with the questions. And you'll probably need to be available in order for the shoot to continue. You don't have that person you can, delegate or deflect that off to. I will also say, don't discount the fact that maybe someone would still be willing to do it if they weren't getting paid. I do think that's valuable, and I do think that at a certain level that's what we're doing here. I mean, it would be great if we could all just do this for the love of it, but you do need to live. But don't discount that maybe someone would want to get their foot in the door. Maybe someone would want to try this position, and maybe they'd be willing to do it just for the experience. It's worth putting out there. I wouldn't expect it. I think it's tough, and sometimes people just can't make it work, but it's worth putting out there. Maybe you could still find someone.
So then maybe like if filmmakers do have either like the money to hire someone, or they're like, we are going to try, to find someone volunteer, like what are like traits or things that the producer should maybe be considering to like find the right person to manage their set?
Obviously, you can look at someone's resume and you can see have they done it before, but I will be honest with you. I have seen impressive resumes, and then it doesn't always translate exactly to every production. Every production is different. It's a different culture. It's a different set of people, a different set of needs. I think it's most conducive to look for someone that's the best fit for you specifically. That doesn't always mean they have the best looking resume. I think you could have experience managing something else and it could translate. You definitely want to find someone that is organized and that enjoys being organized. You do want to find someone that's good with relationships and with people. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of times you're dealing with people all day. It doesn't maybe seem like that would be your job at first when you're thinking about the tasks.
Mm-hmm.
But you are asking a lot of people in making a movie. You're asking a lot of your crew, you're asking a lot of the public, and you can't be, dropping balls, not responding to people, upsetting other people. You have to be also good at relations with others, which is a skill I think could be overlooked in a position like this. I also think being excellent at communicating, getting what you need, receiving the communication, but also communicating with the team, bringing up needs that you see, communicating problems and making sure everyone knows what they need to be doing. I don't necessarily think that person has to have been worked their way up necessarily. I do think it's good to have some prior knowledge of filmmaking, but I also have seen people with maybe a resume that didn't look like they had years and years of film experience still do really well in positions like this.
Okay. So you brought up trying to find somebody that's good with like communicating with people and building those relationships. What are like some tips or things you've learned over the course of managing these films on good communication and building those relationships.
I think for the most part, everyone wants to do a good job. Everyone wants to live up to the expectation, but they need to know what it is. So being effective at communicating what you need and what you expect out of each person. So for example, if I had a PA come to me and say, I don't know what to be doing, on day 5, 6. Well, I probably didn't do a good job at communicating what the expectations are of their position. Because if I did, they would know, okay, well, I expect you to be XYZ, going around seeing if someone needs water, picking up trash, being available, being around, locking the set down if you see pedestrians walking through, that kind of thing. So putting the power on the team to be able to do their job, giving them the tools that they need by giving them the expectation and then empowering them to be able to do it, I think is a key. And that's something I've learned in filmmaking is communicate your expectations, and for the most part, people will meet them and want to meet them. I also will touch on the having relationships with other people. A lot of my day-to-day would be with calling or emailing our locations, our vendors, so maybe our caterers, maybe the hotel, things like that. And you do not want to make these people upset, because a lot of times maybe you've paid to be there, maybe they're offering their location, but if you upset them and they decide they don't want us to come, well, that you just, ruined potentially a whole day of production.
Yeah.
So having that ability to, I don't want to say, I guess kill them with kindness sort of thing. You want them to be happy to have us there, blessed to have us there, not regretting that we're there, or that they're, a part of our production. Most of the time you're calling in favors, or, you've rented a space from someone, or, things like that. So having those really good relationships with other people is just going to keep the production going.
For sure. So I got a couple kind of wrap-up questions for you. The first one being, are there any either common misconceptions or mistakes maybe you've seen producers make when working with you as a production manager?
Yeah, one of the things that I think it's difficult to do is, in independent filmmaking in particular, the producer is often, it's their movie. They haven't been given this movie by a studio or something.
Right.
Or they don't work for a studio. It's their movie. And that it can be hard to give pieces of that away, in a sense. You have all this huge team that you need to rely on. That can be really, really hard. I think that's where it's really good to have a right-hand person, like a production manager, that you can trust, that you don't need to worry about. You can give them these things, and you can trust that they're going to handle it. So one thing I would say to a producer, if I was giving advice, is if you don't have a production manager that you feel you can pass these tasks off to, if you don't feel like you can trust that they're doing what you've asked them to do, and if you don't feel like you can give all this, day-to-day little things away to them, You got to find someone that you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the misconception would be that that the producer still needs to hold on to those things. But like I said earlier, ideally the producer is smooth sailing and they're just overseeing, they don't have to deal with so much on a day-to-day basis.
Right. My final question, and this could be related to the production manager position, but it doesn't have to be, is what's a piece of advice you would give to producers about like running a smooth film set?
Ideally, all that you can do before you start shooting, you should. If you can head off any loose ends, because we all know in filmmaking there are going to be wrenches thrown into everything. You don't want to be scrambling because, you had, XYZ that you still needed to do, and now this problem came up, and now, we're in the weeds.
Mm-hmm.
I think pre-planning and doing everything within your control before stepping onto set day one, do it. That would be my biggest advice, because we know things are going to pop up. We know problems are going to arise, and we don't want to have, going into it already with, not problems, but, we don't want to be overwhelming ourselves unnecessarily.
Yeah.
I think that would be the best way from that standpoint to make sure a set's running smoothly from day to day. I think also having the right team in the right places is going to run your set smoothly. Making sure everyone knows where they need to be and when and what they should be doing. And if they don't, find out why. Where is the disconnect? And how to resolve that, because I think the goal would be everyone shows up, they know exactly what they're doing, they know what they should be doing, they know where they should be, and we go.
Mm-hmm.
That's best case scenario.
Definitely is. Yeah, so that's all the questions I had. So I don't know if there's anything you thought of that like maybe you were hoping I'd ask, or he should have asked this, that you want to add.
One thing I'll just say, I do get a lot of questions from people wanting to get into the film industry. Maybe they're in college still, just starting off, of how. It's a really hard question to answer because everyone has a different way that they got started. But one thing that I will advise is meet as many people as possible. And I know that is so cliche because everyone says it's about who you know and it's connections. And a lot of people think, oh, well, I don't know anyone. There's no one, You find them, they're there. A lot of the people that I've worked with, in particular, all knew each other from film festivals, film conferences. They know a friend of a friend of a friend. I've had people connect with me, like we connected via Facebook because we have mutual connections. It's like that's the way. Mm-hmm. Sure, you could find potentially a job posting somewhere out there and definitely look for those. That can work. That is actually how I started. However, that is not how I've continued. I have continued because of being connected, and I think that there are ways. You can join Facebook groups, you can go to these conferences, you can go to these festivals, you can be available, you can be out there, you can be, pursuing it. It's just not a typical industry where you can just have these credentials and people will be, you just apply for jobs and get them. It's
Yes.
as we've talked about today, you have to have the right people in the right places. And if people know you from a friend, or if they've worked with you before, then they know you're a good fit, and it leads to more things. So I think that would be my best advice if someone's wondering what to do now if they've just graduated. And also being willing to travel. I've really traveled quite a bit. And hopefully people are willing to travel, because unless you, I don't know, even living in Los Angeles, I traveled. So being available and being willing to go where the projects are is also something I would mention too.
Yeah, that's a big one. All right. Well, thank you very much, Allison, for coming on to the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Until next time, make sure to subscribe to the Producer Podcast, and thanks for listening.